Okay, hi guys, welcome to Explore Classroom. My name is Arnett and this is Callie from National Geographic. We're currently in Washington, D.C. at our headquarters. Today we're so lucky to be talking to the Nautilus team today for the Science Communication Fellows who are joining us live. And we've got classrooms today from Texas, Virginia, Canada, Florida, New York, Colorado, New Mexico, and lastly, Georgia.
This month on Explorer Classroom, we're learning about ocean plastics and what we can all do to help this huge problem. We love to chat with explorers out in the field, and we get to connect classrooms like you all directly to the amazing people on the front lines of conservation, storytelling, research and exploration as they work. So today we're connecting with our friends on the Nautilus crew. We'll turn it over to Carrie and Jan to get us started.
Well, hello everyone. My name is Carrie. I'm a science communication fellow on the EV Nautilus. Typically, I'm in New York City, so hello to the New York school students. And I usually work on the Hudson River. So it's so exciting to be out off the coast of California in Cordell Bank in the Greater Farallones National Marine Sanctuaries, going deep down, like 2,000 meters down, and seeing whole new habitats and learning about a lot of new wildlife for me.
I'm Jan Roletto, and I'm the research coordinator at one of those two sanctuaries, Greater Farallones National Marine Sanctuary. And let's see, what did we do yesterday? We all the days kind of run together because ROV can stay down for days on end if the weather holds up. But yeah, we went down to about 1,700 meters, and another day we went down to about 900 meters. Tomorrow we're anticipating 3,200 meters.
Wow,
Yeah,
our
really
deepest dive. That's exciting.
That'll be our deepest dive in Cordell Bank National Marine Sanctuary, Bodega Canyon, and we're really looking forward to seeing what could be there. It's really an exploration.
Yes. So I'm going to share one of our screens so you can see the robot that helps us to explore the deep ocean. So right now, Hercules is not in the water. Hercules is one of the remote operated vehicles that brings us to the bottom of the ocean, along with Argus, another robot that brings us down. They're actually connected together. Argus sits above Hercules and kind of takes on some of that energy, so Hercules can just be a workhorse, capturing footage, taking samples, both of biological samples, water samples, sediment samples, and helping us go to places that no one's been before. So let me quickly share just an example of Hercules. So you're now walking into Herc's hangar. So Hercules, before every expedition, gets maintained. So the ROV scientists are out there making sure Herc is ready for that next dive, which again is likely over 20-something hours. Herc is under the ocean.
Yeah, and really, Argus really plays kind of like the protector role also.
Yes.
So not only does it help buffer from the surface waves and the movement of the ship, but also it's the eye in the sky that looks down on Hercules to make certain that if Hercules gets near a ledge or something, that Hercules doesn't get caught underneath it. It's a very large, very strong, powerful ROV, but still we don't want to lose it in a cave or around a sunken ship or some entanglement. So really Argus is the protector of Hercules also.
Yes. And although just our robots are going into the water, to maneuver them and to help them be, great explorers along with us, it takes a team of scientists. So on the EV Nautilus, there's 31 scientists that are working in teams of about 8 on different watch schedules to explore. So we have, of course, biologists, but we have geologists, people that are really interested in the rock formations and of these canyons. We have people that are data scientists and people that are incredible map makers. Before we go anywhere, we use a multi-beam instrument to map the seafloor so that Argus and Hercules, again, again, don't hit any bottom and can anticipate or have an idea of the bottom of the seafloor. And then we also have video engineers and these ROV engineers. So it takes a team of scientists to explore the ocean floor.
Yes. Each team is required to work 4-hour shifts to each 24-hour cycle. So that means that as long as the bio boxes aren't full and everything's going okay, and if there's still more area to be explored, the ROVs can stay down for as long as we want it to, because
Yeah.
we're here, we're fed, we're bathed, we have housing, and we have a lot of people that can just keep rotating through while Argus and Herc are down at the bottom of the ocean.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that presentation. So we can get some questions in right now. So we'll call our on-screen participants one by one. So please get your questions ready for us. So let's see. Springdale Park Elementary. I'm going to unmute you.
Can I ask a question?
How much plastic do you find?
That's a great question. So, although we're seeing a lot more wildlife than trash, we have come across some marine debris. So, my understanding is that we typically see, according to our data loggers, about 2 pieces of marine debris or trash per watch is the average.
Yeah.
So, on my watch, we saw a Ziploc bag. We saw a bottle, a single-use plastic bottle.
I've had this for 2 years.
So we are unfortunately seeing some trash at the bottom, even again at 2,000 meters below the surface of our ocean. And so this does show that, you know, we are over consuming plastics, and especially single-use plastics. But when you think about it, plastics were only created in the 1950s. So there's also a lot of opportunity for us to be innovative, right? We've innovated these amazing robots that are bringing us to the bottom of the ocean. So it just speaks to when there's the will, we can innovate and create some solutions. But at home, we can also change some of our behaviors. We can refuse using plastics. We can reduce and reuse, the plastics that we do think are necessary for our lives. But we can also talk to our friends, and maybe even at your school, talk to your cafeteria. How could you guys maybe reduce plastics right where you live? So as scientists, of course, we think that research is a really important way to understand the relationship between our environments and people. And I think plastics is in our oceans is a great reminder that we've done a fair amount of harm, but there's also hope that we can create some really needed solutions around this issue.
Got it. Yeah, got to keep hope alive. Great question and even better answer. So on to the next classroom. Let's go with Melanie Ball's GDCI classroom. I can unmute you. Hi there.
Hi.
Do you have a question? Ready for the Nautilus team?
Seems like there's a little bit of a delay.
Yeah.
No, I can come back.
Oh, I think it came through the chat.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Okay. They
Oh.
asked, can you tell us about your most recent adventures?
Okay.
Great.
Yeah.
Easy.
Well, we spent the last 2 days in Greater Fairlawns National Marine Sanctuary, which is in Northern California, off the Sonoma County and Mendocino County coastline. and it's a very large area. We started pretty deep and saw a few corals and sponges here and there. And then we moved over to what we're calling some management zones or some new management zones within the NOAA suite of agencies and offices. And we investigated areas that were proposed to be closed to bottom trawling. So we were really looking at areas that had benthic substrate, and Hercules is a great vehicle to study deep sea corals, sponges. So corals not only live in the tropics, but they live in very cold water and very deep areas. And these three-dimensional structures along the seafloor really attract a lot of fish. So where we have corals and sponges, it's usually a pretty good indication that the ocean health, that ocean ecosystem is very healthy, very thriving. So we really look for a wide range of species, not just invertebrates, but also fish up in the water column. The last 2 days, some of our images, I don't know if you guys were able to see some of those images, the water was just clouded over with krill. And our sanctuaries here are really well known to be highly productive areas. These are basically the best, some of the best restaurants for whales and seabirds along the Eastern Pacific or the West Coast of North America. So we call it a destination feeding ground. So at the surface, you can see whales, dolphins, seabirds, all foraging on the fish that are eating that krill or directly on that krill. Some of those bait balls of krill, it was just so dense, you could barely see through it.
Yeah.
So
and then when the ROVs come above water, that's when some of our work starts processing those samples in our wet lab. So I'm going to share, just not much is going on in the wet lab right now, but just so you can see it. So this is where scientists then process the sample. So we're identifying and processing our, sponges, corals, some species that we don't even actually know that much about them. Yesterday, I believe we collected a predatory coral that predatory sponge. Thank you.
Predatory sponge. It was really cool. They called it a sea palm. A palm frond sponge. And you could see in there little amphipods, little invertebrate creatures living or dying, being consumed by that sponge.
Yeah.
So it's a predatory sponge, and it was really cool. We were seeing them here and there, and we do have the ability to talk to scientists ashore, and we were getting some information, some feedback, and a couple of one of the corals and one of the sponges that we collected and processed in the lab are pretty new to science.
Yes.
So one of them, we're not even quite certain what species of coral that really was, but that predatory sponge was really, really cool.
So exciting. So in that wet lab, we're also processing water samples. One project with the water samples is an environmental DNA project. And often we're collecting our water samples around coral communities because by taking that water sample, we can filter it, and then we can actually sequence DNA from that water to say what was living in this area and to essentially understand all the life that is present that maybe we didn't see with our eyes, but that the DNA, we can kind of act like sleuths, will tell us was there. So that's really fun.
I call it CSI for deep sea.
Yeah.
Love that. Okay, on to the
So
next.
that's a little bit about our recent adventures.
Cool, very cool. On to the next. Let's see. I'm gonna go to Thornton Elementary. I'm gonna unmute you.
Why did you choose this job? Also, can you show us more of the ship?
I love that. So I'd happily show you more of the ship. We'll start with that and then we'll talk about how we chose this. So let's just see, where are we? So, oh my gosh, right now you guys are seeing an image of Drake Bay and Drake's Bay. And because Jan is actually from here, I'll let her kind of tell you a little bit more about this location.
Well, Drake's Bay is a bay that is just south of a very large promontory that sticks out. It's called Point Reyes. It's a very prominent feature along the California coast. And actually, the cliffs along Drake's Bay kind of look like the White Cliffs of Dover. The hillsides are often really green, especially during the winter time. And it's very, very calm in here. And that's why, because we have a big windstorm just developed this morning, should be passing through tomorrow morning. So we're just taking a break from exploration and our deep sea dives and just kind of chilling in Drake's Bay. But the coastline is a national seashore, which is part of the National Park Service system. And it's pretty much almost pristine. There are some historic dairy ranches that the Park Service works with them to basically maintain sustainable, using best management practices for keeping cows out of esteros and waterways and what have you. Sustainable fishing in this area. This is a very nice, calm bay. And this morning we could see a few humpback whales feeding just off of the bay and just kind of spouting up. But it's kind of windy out there, so the spouts come up and then they kind of get blown down pretty quickly.
I'm also going to bring you into our control room. So this is where, this is where on our watch we sit, and this is where we bring to you all that amazing footage that you can see on nautiluslive.org during our dives. So you are looking at some of the screens that they're not all functioning right now because we're not presently on a dive. So we're in the kind of time in between a dive and therefore working on some of, our technology. But at this location, you would have a navigator, someone who is helping to direct and interpret some of the, location where we are, reading maps, reading a lot of data, and making sure that really the expedition and dive is running smoothly. Then you have our 2 ROV pilots just to the left of the navigator. So first is the Hercules pilot. And again, this is an engineer who is manipulating the ROV to help it to fly and collect samples. And then next to that individual would be the the Argus pilot. And Argus is more that protector, as Jan was saying, making sure that Herc can do that hard work of collecting and flying. So that's a little bit of a walkthrough of our control room. But in terms of how did we get to this place in our career and to be on EV Nautilus, do you want to tell a little bit about your path?
Oh my goodness. I started out in college as a ceramic major.
Neat.
And I realized that if I was ever going to make a living out of it, I had to be a business person. And I knew I wasn't going to be able to do accounting or open up a store or manage something like that. So my original just general requirement classes really kind of steered me towards marine biology. And it was something that I kind of caught on pretty quickly. And I really had an aptitude for it. And I really liked it. You have to like writing, you have to like mapping and using new technologies like GIS. Even though you think that you might not need math when you're a biologist, you do. Often we have to figure out, okay, we have this much area we need to cover and the vessel's going this speed and it takes this long to get down to a particular site. And so there's quite a bit of math involved in mapping, in interpretation, statistics, and analysis. So I really like that aspect of it. But yeah,
Neat.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm originally from Detroit, Michigan, so very far from oceans, but I always was drawn to water. So I got the opportunity to go to a college in Maine called Bowdoin College, and they had a coastal study center as well as field classes that took me to the ocean. And I just fell in love with the intertidal zone. I loved tide pools. I loved seeing all the life that existed in these little nooks and crannies of our coast. And from there, I really just created mentorships with some of my professors and would just ask questions and ask if they knew of any opportunities. So I was able to go to LA for a little bit, Los Angeles. I was an ocean lifeguard in LA, which was just a really fun way to kind of enjoy the ocean in a totally different capacity. And then I did research in Western Australia on sharks and seagrass beds. And I went and got a graduate degree in aquatic ecology, but also environmental justice, because I love doing research, but I also like involving the community in research. I really think getting people involved is going to be a huge part of us protecting our water. And for the last about 10 years, I've been working out in New York City. So that work allows me to help restore some urban waterways. A lot of people think our waters around our cities are maybe polluted or dirty. And there's actually a lot of biology and life and a lot of hope for these systems. So much of my research now and work now is involving community in habitat enhancement and water quality around New York City. And then in terms of getting on EV Nautilus, man, I just was searching for cool opportunities for professional development to just add something new to my year. And I found the EV Nautilus and applied to a science communication fellowship. So I am one of about 15 people that have been invited from schools or from other locations to come aboard and learn from other amazing scientists and participate in these expeditions.
Yeah, and I find that if you have an internship or volunteer opportunity, go ahead and take it, because that can help build your resume. I mean, these types of jobs, they're not a lot of them, and so they're already looking for people when you have a job opening, people with skills and people with that unpaid internship volunteer type of experience can be very valuable, because we know that you're committed to this because you've either worked at a stipend level or you volunteered, but you're really committed. And so, take those opportunities as you see them to help build your resume and your career.
Yeah, and just be curious, ask great questions. And when you find someone who you think is impressive and you're curious about how they got to where they are, have that conversation with them and kind of build that mentorship up relationship.
All right, well, that was really great advice. We will take it to the next classroom, which will be Catherine Herbert's classroom. We're going to unmute your microphone for you. All right, who's got a question?
Back up just a little bit. Back up. Okay, go ahead. Look up at the camera and ask.
What's the weirdest creature you've ever seen? What's the weirdest sea creature you've ever seen?
Oh my gosh, the weirdest? Is that what you asked? Okay,
Yeah.
so the weirdest creature. Thank you. That's a fun question.
Well, I think the other day, you can go on to YouTube to see some of this footage, but the other day we saw a little worm, and it had these coppery gold bristles. It's called a bristle worm. Lives in the deep ocean, and and there's no light usually down there. So when Kirk dives down there, it's very brightly illuminated. And this worm has these bristles that stick up, and they sparkle, they shimmer like a Flapper Girl's dress. It was so cool. That was my favorite visual for this particular cruise.
Yeah, that was really special. And then, man, I just think the octopuses are so cool. So
They are.
we saw a flapjack octopus, and they can often smush down to be pretty flat and then pop back up. And they have these two little, what are these little fins behind?
Yeah, they're like little fins. They help them swim around.
Yeah, little fins up here.
They
and
kind of look like Dumbo ears almost.
yeah, and they're so cute, and I just really appreciate their orange color, their shape, and their goofy movements.
Gotta Google those later.
Yeah, we're writing all those down. All right, so our next classroom, we're gonna go talk to, let's see, Jennifer's classroom. You guys have a question for us?
Hi guys, I muted you. Oh, can't hear you guys.
Oh, we can't quite hear you guys. Oh,
It's okay.
is your microphone on?
Oh, there we go.
Oh, there it is. Oh no, it went away.
No.
Can they type in a question in the chat?
Oh wait, I hear you now.
No, I think that was Nautilus.
No, I hear you now. Having a mic difficulty. You can type it in the side chat bar. With no one really owning our oceans, what can we do to stop pollution
Oh,
and
that's such a good
overfishing
question.
when there are no laws? That's an awesome question.
Did you guys get that?
Laws. There are international laws for the ocean of trash, and once you get within what's called the exclusive economic zone, which is about 200 miles off of most countries, then there's other laws within there for extraction and mining. And then as you get within 12 miles of the coastline, then there's quite a few laws. So for example, Greater Fairlawns National Marine Sanctuary, we're somewhere between 50 and 60 miles from the coastline. So we cover the coastline, we cover some estuaries, as well as way offshore, about 50, 60 miles offshore. And we do have some pretty strong regulations regulating, prohibiting oil drilling, mining, laying of cables, because national marine sanctuaries protect the habitat that all of these creatures, like the birds, the mammals, the fish, the krill. So we want to make certain that basically it's your apartment building. We're the maintenance. We're the supervisors of the maintenance department of that apartment building, and we protect it and make certain that everything is clean, neat, and tidy, and healthy for a protective system. So there are a lot of laws, particularly near the coast, but also even offshore. And there's some international agreements. They're down in the Antarctic. There's some very, very large marine protected areas, kind of controlling extraction, as well as deep sea deep sea floor mining and oil drilling. So there are protections out there. Granted, as you get further away from a country, the protections are more international, and so they're collaborative. They're done on a consensus. But yeah, there's not really the far off ocean police that sometimes are needed.
Yeah, but this is where sanctuaries play such an important role. So again, we're in Cordell Bank Marine Sanctuary and the Greater Fairlawns Marine Sanctuaries, and naming areas and water as sanctuaries then helps us to better protect them. It often also helps us to better research them. And there's a connection. The more we know about a place and its importance, then likely the more, the more energy and funding and effort to protect it. So that's a huge part of our work is research and science can actually help protect our waters. And so that's what the EV Nautilus is, all about, or it's a big part of what it's about.
All right, that was a really, really good question. So we'll go for another round of questions. We'll take it back to Springdale Park Elementary School. Do you guys have another question for us? We're gonna unmute you.
Have you found any shipwrecks?
The question was, have you found any shipwrecks?
Yes.
We weren't looking particularly for shipwrecks on this particular cruise, where we're looking really at seafloor biological communities, but we do work in conjunction with Ocean Exploration Trust and on the Nautilus, and we do look at shipwrecks. Typically, we find shipwrecks with our multi-beam mapping systems, as well as going through historic records. So the sanctuary program actually has a maritime heritage program within our sanctuary program. And Greater Fairlawns National Marine Sanctuary has over 400 known shipwrecks in our sanctuary. And I have been on a few dives looking at actual shipwrecks. The USS Independence was one that was a joint cruise between the sanctuaries and the Department of Navy, as well as the Nautilus team. And it was the first time that eyes were laid on this large aircraft carrier that was used in World War II. It was also used in testing atomic bomb explosions. And then later on, it was scuttled far off of San Francisco, long before the sanctuaries were designated in this area. So we also help protect not just the critters, but also our cultural heritage. We work with tribal communities along our coast to make certain that those cultures are preserved. So we're both natural protectors of natural resources as well as cultural resources. So we do have, the shipwrecks are beautiful sometimes. Sometimes the vessels are made out of wood, and so they kind of like crumble into the seabed. But a lot of critters do grow on the shipwrecks. So shipwrecks are like deep sea coral communities and colonies.
All right, awesome. And just a reminder for our live viewers that are watching live on YouTube, you're welcome to use the chat bar on the side if you have any questions for us. We have more time to add on more classrooms, so I'm going to go back to Julie's classroom for Thornton Elementary. I'm going to unmute you guys.
Sally, go ahead, ask.
What kind of creatures do you take care of?
What kind of
That's a
What kind of creatures do you see?
Great. So I heard two questions. What do we see and what do we take care of? So when we go down to 2,000 meters deep or 200 meters deep, we're seeing a very wide range of animals. When you zoom in to just one coral cluster, you will see so much life often associated with these corals and sponge communities. So we think that our work helps to protect all of them, even if they're microscopic, because we think about this system as in total as a whole. We really care about the tiny things because often these tiny things, like Jan said, for instance, krill feed bigger things, and they're all part of the energy that this system needs to thrive. So we protect everything from the microscopic phytoplankton and zooplankton to these larger corals and sponges and octopuses to then even, of course, the whales. And so those are some of the critters that we also see, but I'm sure Jan can tell us a little bit more too.
Yeah, for example, I mean, that's a really great point as far as just really wanting to protect the entire ecosystem. So the entire ecosystem consists of chlorophyll, just the basics. And then the little diatoms will eat the chlorophyll. And then the zooplankton, like the krill, will eat the diatoms. And then the salmon come through and eat the krill, or the seabirds come in and eat the krill. Or the herring or the hake will come in and eat the krill. But like last night we were looking at a sea star, like a sun star, and there was so much krill in the water that they were getting stuck onto the sea star, onto the back of the sea star, and the sea star would take out one of its little legs and it would move. It was kind of like surfing the krill closer and closer to its mouth, and we were like, oh, it's gonna eat the krill, and there was krill all over it, so it was capturing the krill. So from the nutrients all the way up to the whales and the seabirds and the salmon, we protect it all because, again, we protect the water quality, we protect the habitat that all of these critters live in. There are other offices within NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, that actually looks at population. So they worry about the amount of fish. We worry about the habitat that the fish live in, and we work together to make certain that those are living, healthy ecosystems.
Great question. Thank you.
You guys are like the guardians of the ocean. So I'm going to grab a question from the sidebar. Melanie asks, what do you do with the information you find?
Great. So I'll bring you guys back to our lab to help to just remind us of kind of, a few of the steps. Well, first off, we have to process all of the samples that we collect. And then we make sure that we share it with institutions and scientists that are experts in the field so we can, one, identify new species or better understand the species that we're seeing. In addition, we're trying to find relationships between water quality and these species. So we're collecting those water samples to understand things like ocean acidification or, again, wildlife diversity using environmental DNA. So much of our work, we don't want to just keep it within only experts, though. We want to share it too. Yeah. So we integrate our findings into environmental education, into what we share with the general public when they come to these amazing marine sanctuaries. And we also share it, nationally and internationally to help inform the work and management of other locations. So so much of this work helps to make the field better and fine tune our understandings about deep ocean science.
Yeah, a lot of effort does go into, before a cruise, a research cruise, in finding partners that will use the data. And the data then goes to scientists, conservation groups, management authorities like state and federal management authorities. So NOAA, the National Marine Sanctuary Program, is one of those management agencies, and we have other offices within NOAA besides Office of National Marine Sanctuaries like National Marine Fisheries Service, National Ocean Service, that's really interested in basically the health of the entire ecosystem. So we're collecting a little piece of the ecosystem puzzle, and then we're putting it in place and just really kind of sharing it to really kind of put together the whole big picture. So not one office and not one researcher can do it all. It really takes a community of conservation stakeholders like fishing groups, as well as management agencies, as well as the general public. Because if you're concerned, you go about a particular issue, you go to your state and federal representatives and say, I'm concerned about this. And then that is a federal or a governmental community, which comes back to us and assigns us to look at certain issues like ocean acidification. So that one Niskin bottle of water really gets transferred to a lot of different uses, whether it be research, science, outreach, or basically regulatory.
Wow, that is incredible. All right, so we will go to our next classroom. Let's check in with Ms. Herbert's class. Do you guys have another question for the Nautilus team? We're gonna unmute you.
Has a shark ever bit your camera?
I'm
Did you
sorry,
hear that
can
or
you
you wanna
repeat
bet?
the question?
Has a shark ever bit in your camera?
Oh, has
Yeah.
a shark ever bit the camera? Have you seen that, Jan?
Well, not on Nautilus, but we
Okay.
do see sharks swimming by. Usually, they're the largest sharks that we see on that we've seen on camera in the past couple of years that I've seen are 6-gill sharks. But we've seen this week a lot of different types of cat sharks.
Yes, and their eggs.
Mhm.
So many eggs. It's been
Yeah.
really neat.
Yeah. We are researching in an area where white sharks do occur pretty regularly, especially during the fall. But the white sharks at this time of the year are much more coastal, and so we're pretty far offshore and pretty deep for white sharks. White sharks like the pinnipeds, the seals, and the sea lions that are on our coast and on our coastal on our offshore islands. So we haven't seen any white sharks that I know of from Hercules, but we have seen plenty of other sharks.
Yeah, sharks are one of my favorite animals. So I was very excited to see dogfish and cat sharks, and their eggs are just so cool. These cat shark eggs, they are in these egg cases that sometimes are called mermaid purses. And when they're freshly laid, they're bright yellow. And we've been seeing them in these huge clusters. And it's just really cool to see these young eggs and how these sharks are using this rocky habitat and to hide their eggs and to lay their eggs. And so it just speaks to kind of that full cycle of life that we get to see when we go deep into our oceans.
Well, sharks are my favorite animal too, so I think it's so cool you get to see them all the time. All right, we'll switch it to one last question. We'll go back to Miss Jennifer's class with School of Dreams Academy. Do you guys have one more question?
If you guys can put your question in the chat bar. Were either of you on the Titanic team or working on finding Amelia Earhart's missing plane?
Oh.
No, unfortunately not.
Yeah, we weren't, but we are working with people that were on the Amelia Earhart expedition and on many other expeditions. I think the navigator, Miles, that's on my watch team, says he's done over 30 expeditions on the EV Nautilus. So EV Nautilus is great at keeping its staff and keeping interns and moving them up into being, you know, leaders of their scientific expertise. So we think that those projects are super interesting, but both of our backgrounds more in biology and ecology. So we've been on trips focused on those kind of objectives.
Yeah, I think the Amelia Earhart is going to be playing on Nat Geo this coming Sunday.
Yeah, the 20.
20?
Yeah.
20th. Oh, so that's in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's exciting though.
Very exciting.
And nobody's talking about it.
Well, now we are. But thank you so much for joining us in our session today. You guys have an awesome resume build. I'm sure children watching today will be very motivated and inspired. So don't forget classrooms to visit natgeo.org/explore classroom. You can check out our schedule and register a classroom for an on-screen spot. Check out ways to get involved with the links in the description below. Keep the conversation going on Twitter, on tag NatGeo Education as well as EV Nautilus, and use #ExploreClassroom.
And of course, subscribe to our channel to get updates about all of our new videos. All right, classrooms, we're gonna turn on all of the microphones, and nice and loud for me, tell our Nautilus team goodbye and thank you. You ready?